The moment the wheelchair slipped on the smooth cafe floor and tilted toward the sunlight pouring through the wide glass windows, Arav Holden felt the world slow down, the way it had the day his wife never came home from work. A soft gasp cut through the warm lunchtime noise. A tray clattered to the ground, and a woman's fragile body leaned helplessly forward, as if gravity itself had decided to test how much kindness still lived in ordinary people. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in quiet moments that change lives forever, please take a second right now to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel Whisper Tales 3. Your small support helps stories like this reach hearts that are waiting to heal. Arav moved before he even thought. His arms were already steadying the chair, his hands gripping the metal frame, his knees pressing into the floor as he eased the woman back into balance. It was broad daylight, the kind of bright afternoon that usually made him feel guilty for carrying so much grief inside his chest. The cafe smelled of fresh bread and roasted coffee, and families filled the tables near the windows. It was supposed to be a normal lunch stop before the blind date his sister had begged him to try. Just 1 hour, she had promised. Just one coffee with a stranger to remind him that life had not ended with loss. The woman he had caught looked as startled as he felt. Her dark hair had fallen over one eye, and her hands shook as they rested uselessly in her lap. Arav noticed immediately the careful way her legs were positioned, the braces under her clothes, and the faint stiffness in her shoulders that told him more than her silence ever could. He helped reposition the chair gently, lifting the fallen bag from the floor and placing it beside her, then adjusting the strap that had slipped from her shoulder. He did not ask questions. He did not stare. He simply smiled softly and waited for her breathing to slow. This was how Arav lived now, quietly, carefully, always watching the edges of the world for someone who might be about to fall. Being a single father had taught him that love was often invisible work. It lived in packed lunches and late-night homework battles, in tying shoelaces with shaking hands when exhaustion blurred his vision, and pretending not to hear his 8-year-old son Noah crying through the thin wall on the nights he missed the mother he barely remembered. Arav had not dated since the accident that turned his family into something smaller and more fragile. He had become good at being alone, good at surviving, but not good at believing he deserved more than that. The woman finally lifted her head. Gratitude softened her features, but something else lingered in her eyes, something deeper and heavier. It was not embarrassment. It was familiarity with moments like this. Arav gestured toward the counter, letting her know he could help move her chair if she wanted. She shook her head gently and gave a small, steady nod that meant she was okay now. He returned her fallen phone to the open bag and made sure it had not cracked, then backed away slowly, careful not to turn the moment into something uncomfortable. It felt important to him that she kept her dignity intact, that she did not feel like a problem that needed fixing. He ordered his coffee and sandwich, checked the time on his phone, and felt the familiar knot of nerves twist in his stomach. His blind date was supposed to arrive any minute. He had almost canceled 3 times that morning. Noah had clung to him at the door before school, whispering that he hoped this new person would not disappear too. Arav chose a table near the window, sunlight warming his forearms, and tried to calm his breathing. He told himself this was just coffee, just 2 strangers exchanging polite smiles, just a step forward instead of another quiet retreat. What he did not know was that across the room, the woman he had helped was watching him too. Her name was Leora Bennett, and courage had become a daily discipline since the car crash 2 years earlier that had shattered her spine and rearranged her future into something unrecognizable. She had once been fearless, the kind of woman who hiked alone, who danced barefoot in public parks, who believed love was something you ran toward without hesitation. After the accident, fear took on new shapes. Fear of being a burden, fear of being invisible, fear of sitting across from a stranger who would see the chair before they ever saw her. She had almost canceled her own blind date. She had stared at her reflection that morning and practiced confidence like a fragile language she no longer spoke fluently. But she came anyway, because healing demanded motion, even when the body could not move the way it once had. When the message on her phone vibrated and displayed the name of the cafe and the table number, her breath caught painfully in her chest. It was Arav's table. The realization rippled through her slowly, not as shock, but as something softer and far more dangerous. Hope. Arav looked up when the shadow of her wheelchair reached the edge of his table. His polite smile froze, then softened into something quietly astonished. The universe had always felt indifferent to him, efficient in its cruelty and randomness. This felt different. This felt deliberate. He stood instinctively, pulling out the chair opposite him before realizing what he was doing, then quickly moving it aside so she could position herself comfortably. The awkwardness hovered for only a moment before dissolving into gentle understanding. No explanations were needed. The coincidence spoke loudly enough. What surprised Arav most was how quickly the tension inside him eased. He had prepared himself for forced conversation and polite pretending. Instead, there was an immediate calm, the kind that came from recognizing something familiar in someone you had only just met. Leora's presence was steady, grounded. Her laughter came easily when he nearly knocked over his own drink, and her eyes softened when he mentioned Noah and the chaotic beauty of single parenthood. They talked about ordinary things, but the weight of their shared resilience sat quietly between them like an unspoken bond. Arav spoke about learning to cook with one hand while helping with school projects with the other, about carrying grief and responsibility in the same breath. Leora spoke about rebuilding confidence piece by piece, about learning to trust her body again in a world that suddenly required planning for everything most people never thought about. Outside, the afternoon brightened, clouds drifting lazily across the sky. Daytime continued exactly as it always had for everyone else. But for Arav and Leora, something shifted. The real challenge came not from logistics or schedules, but from fear. Arav feared introducing anyone into Noah's fragile emotional world. Leora feared becoming someone's complicated story instead of someone's future. Each of them had learned how to protect themselves too well. But protection, they slowly realized, could also become isolation. When Leora confessed quietly that most dates never made it past the chair, Arav felt something tighten painfully in his chest. He saw, with sudden clarity, how easily kindness could become rare when convenience ruled human connection. He did not promise anything. He did not try to rescue her pain. He simply stayed present, listening the way he had learned to listen to his son on the nights grief pressed hardest against small ribs. By the time the empty cups were cleared away and the sunlight had shifted lower against the cafe floor, neither of them wanted the moment to end. Just before the ending, special request line to Comrade. Please take a moment to comment below and tell us what kindness means to you today. Later that evening, as Arav walked home through warm daylight that lingered longer than expected, he realized the heaviness he carried felt slightly lighter. Not gone, just lighter. And across the city, Leora rolled toward her apartment with a softness in her chest she had not felt since before the accident, the kind that whispered that life still had room to surprise her. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that love can appear quietly in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Whisper Tales 3. Your engagement helps these stories reach someone who may be waiting for their own second chance. Somewhere between spilled coffee, sunlight on polished floors, and a wheelchair steadied by unfamiliar hands, two people who thought their best chapters were behind them discovered that the bravest thing any heart can do is remain open to possibility, even after it has learned exactly how painful hope can be.